just upon the stair. We spoke of was and when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend, which gave us some surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought you died alone a long, long time ago. I know, not me. I never lost control. Your face took place with the man who sold the world.
What's up, everybody? We're here with another Obsessive Compulsive Gamer Podcast. This time, we're covering the very popular topic of Castlevania, a video game based on basically the story of Dracula and a vampire hunter out to get him. The family of Belmonts being the ones cursed with having to take care of Dracula every time he comes back. And originally, the game was set up more so like a movie. Even when the credits rolled, they treated the cast of characters in the game as actors. So it was more an ode to those old, Universal horror films from the 30s, like Dracula and Frankenstein and The Mummy. So, but regardless, it has grown into a very vast, popular, and detailed universe with a huge cast of characters throughout the series, as well as different main villains, despite Dracula being the primary villain in a majority of the games. So let's go ahead and get everyone introduced here. I have with me several returning folks. You guys remember Mike B from several of our previous podcasts. Go ahead.
What's going on?
I also have with me on my right over here, Carlos.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And then down below me with no camera, unfortunately, because of some mild internet connectivity issues, we got Gino returning.
Hey, I'm here in my sister's cabinet, so it's a pretty small space.
That explains the lack of camera. And Gino has been on hiatus from the podcast for all. When was the last time we had you on?
Street Fighter.
It was Street Fighter. Okay, so that was about 3-4 episodes ago now, something like that. So. Yeah, maybe you're right. Anyway, and then right next to Gino, we got Frank returning.
Yo, what's up?
So in this episode, Mike B and I are actually going to be the host. We're co-hosting today. Frank, Carlos, and Gino will be our guests. They are going to be our Castlevania experts. And that's really because Mike and I don't have a very in-depth history with Castlevania. Me personally, and this is going to shock many of you, that my first Castlevania game that I actually played through all the way to the end was Castlevania on the N64, which is not a very highly regarded Castlevania game. I, for one, did enjoy it, though playing it again nowadays, I can see why people do not regard it very highly. But how about you, Mike? What are your short experiences with Castlevania?
Well, when I first started, because my first experience with it was actually surprisingly Castlevania 64, and I had a 64 at the time. I didn't know that many games to get for it, so mine's not really of an amazing story or anything yet. Right. So I rented it, and I was just terrible at it. So I just didn't have a good experience on my first time with Castlevania. And I was like, the game didn't suck. I just sucked at it, and there was I guess I was younger, and it was just too much for me to handle. I guess to get through the game. So. Yeah, so that kind of us answering this leads into our first question for you guys, which is, what was your first Castlevania experience? And hopefully it was better than mine. And we'll start off with you, Carlos.
My first experience was actually back in '88. I would say Castlevania Simon's Quest. Actually, it's one of the first games that introduced me to Castlevania in general. At the time, I would always be watching old horror movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, all those classics with Lon Chaney. But playing Castlevania even opened up that realm to be more fascinated with the Dracula, with the underworld, the monsters you deal with. That's one of the first games that actually introduced me to it in general.
That's cool. And then Simon's Quest is the second game, right?
Right. It's the second one with Simon Belmont. to me, that's like a special game because that was the first one I played. I mean, it had a lot of its moments too, but it was still pretty cool. You know, it had its timer,
No, yeah.
changes, but it was always cool. I enjoyed it, and I do cherish that. That was the first game I was introduced to. Too.
Yeah, some of those
Did you?
earlier
Yeah, go for it.
Castlevania games were still highly influenced by arcade style, so you had a point system and a timer, and of course the later games changed that.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that night and day system? I think that was in that one, right? Too.
Hmm.
You know, as a kid, yeah, I enjoyed it because I didn't complain about it because it was just programmed into it and had to deal with its flaws and find a way to beat it. As an adult, it is a little bit tedious, especially when you get hit and you fall back. It's kind
Yeah,
of
it's for going back and me trying older games. When I tried that one, I thought that was a little tedious for it. But yeah, that's really cool that Simon's Quest was your first one.
Well, just to add something here real quick, like the knockback in the game, with especially with the first three, I was used to playing something like Super Mario Brothers, so you could control Mario's movement through the air. But with Castlevania, you can't do that. Once you jump, you have to commit to that jump. So there's always issues where if you get knocked back, you can't control where you're falling. So for some people, that was part of the struggle.
The many deaths of being hit and going off an edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gino, what was your first experience with the Castlevania series?
I started. It's funny because when you're a kid, everything is colored in like floors and candy. So like it's I just remember being with a bunch of my friends, and it's really funny. And I have a mixed memory of like the first time I was introduced to an NES. I swear to God, it was like Super Mario Brothers, Excite Bike, Legend of Zelda, Kung Fu, Castlevania, Akari Warriors, and I don't remember something else. But all of it like in one night. Like it's one of the most incredible memories I ever had. So yeah, I would say like the first one in like what was it, 1980? It was in 1987. So yeah, that first Castlevania.
The night of no sleep.
Well, yeah, and blow pops. So
no sleep and blow pops.
Yeah.
What about you, Frank? First experience?
Okay. So the first one I experienced was the first game. It was at a friend's house. I don't remember exactly when, but I've shared it before that like growing up, my parents did not like me playing video games, and I can't really blame them because I mean that's all I wanted to do. So I went over to a friend's house down the street, and he had an NES with like a bunch of games, and he popped on Castlevania, and I don't even think I played it. I think I just watched him play it because I don't remember actually having, the game to play until way later on. Honestly, the NES games, I don't remember playing them until like even ROMs, because the first proper one that I actually played, not experienced, was Super Castlevania 4. But I remember the first game because, I was like, oh my God, this scary game, you're having to kill skeletons and bats and knights and all this stuff. And I really like the first one a lot, but with, that first experience, only just watching it, it wasn't as endearing to me as my first actual played game, which was Super Castlevania 4.
Ooh.
Now, technically, Super Castlevania 4 is a reimagining of the original Castlevania, right?
Yeah, I think it's because they wanted to, the first one was so limited, and they just wanted to use the like the Mode 7 chip and really expand on show what the SNES could do. Honestly, it's kind of like a tech demo, because it's just a remake. Now, if you watch the Castlevania Perfected Timeline from Gamer Thumb, he does actually make it canon as a sequel as opposed to a remake. But
I have a question about that, the Super Castlevania, though. Does it have the exact same layout on the stage layouts for the original too, or they kind of mix it?
Oh, no. It's expanded. So, okay. I mean, you can. That's why I think he has a pretty good argument as far as saying that it's a sequel, because the first game has 7 stages, I think. Is it 7, Gino? 6 or 7?
I think it's 7. Yeah, it's been a while since I've played it.
I just played it, a couple nights ago and beat it for the first time, and I can't remember because it's just such a short game. But
Yeah, it's not long.
But the layout, it pretty much deviates right away because in the first game you start off walking into the castle, or at least the castle grounds, and in the first in Super Castlevania 4, you're actually approaching the castle, and I think we can get into Super Castlevania 4 a little bit more, but the first game has been remade multiple times, with different ports and everything. So, yeah.
Cool.
Very good.
All right, so then the next question we have in line for you guys is, what other games in the series have you played? And Gino, we'll start with you. Just I know you in particular have had a lot of experience with playing multiple Castlevania games, so maybe list some of the ones that are more memorable for you. But whatever you like, what are some of the games that you've played in the series?
I think I've definitely played like all those original games, not the MSX like Vampire Killer. I haven't like sat down to play that physically, like a physical copy of it. But yeah, it's certainly 1 through 3 and 4 and 64 and Symphony of the Night and what was the PlayStation one? Is that Chronicles?
Yeah, Chronicles.
Yes.
Chronicles. So all of those. And a lot of the stuff that I missed was the handheld stuff, with the exception of I think maybe that first one, like Harmony of Dissonance, and then the newest ones. But I would say like the first 4 and Symphony of the Night are the most memorable for me. I mean, those are just I could just play those for the rest of my life and be happy,
Now, you had mentioned Vampire Killer. For audience members who may not know, Vampire Killer is so the MSX was a personal computer available in Japan, and Vampire Killer was basically a reimagining of the original Castlevania on that system. It was very different because it did introduce some of those aspects of non-linear gameplay where you could make choices about where to travel. Other things is like there was a locked door at the end of the level before the boss, and you had to find the key in order to unlock it. There were treasure chests and things like that. So it was very, very different, but it never officially released here in North America or even Europe, right? It was just a Japanese-only game.
I think it was.
Was it released in Europe? It may have been,
Sure.
because MSX was certainly more popular everywhere else but here. But also, don't forget Dracula X. Also Dracula X, which is great, and gets kind of shuffled under the rug.
Depends on which version of Dracula X we're talking about, though.
Well, not Rondo, the Super Nintendo.
Well, Dracula X is based on that Rondo of Blood, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
on the
it's
SNES.
Okay.
yeah,
That's right, because okay, just making sure.
certainly inferior, but
And then you had
Worth
also
mentioning.
mentioned Chronicles on PS1, which was originally it was released on. See, I have the notes right here.
It's
There's
the
a
Sharp.
Sharp.
The
There you
Sharp,
go.
68,000.
So it was originally
That was
released
another
there, and then it got released on the PS1 here. But the reason I bring it up is Chronicles is yet another remake of the original Castlevania, correct?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when it released here on the PS1, it also included Rondo of Blood,
Mm-mm.
No,
or was
No,
that the
it-
PSP version?
PSP.
So- The PSP version was the Dracula X Chronicles, and it was a remake, like a proper remake of Rondo of Blood, to where it had 3D. It was 2.5D, and then it also had the original Rondo of Blood unlockable and Symphony of the Night unlockable.
Okay, so it doesn't have the original Chronicles game. It's Dracula
No.
X Chronicles because it's a remake of Rondo of Blood. Okay.
Yes, for Dracula X.
Right.
The Castlevania Chronicles itself was just the remake of that of the Sharp 68, because I don't even remember what it was called on the Sharp. I think it might just be Castlevania there as well, but it has that original version unlockable as well, which is the harder version because the arranged mode, the remake, it's instead of a knockback, you just get knocked up.
Debatable as to which one is more annoying, but
I mean, for accidental deaths
I
because
don't-
you're hit. you're not gonna die in the arrange mode because of that.
So
Unless
is it then like 9 months later you realize all the regrets you've had in life?
are you talking to me?
I mean, if you're going to be getting knocked up, right?
Oh,
Yes. Okay.
Knocked up. I mean, I literally don't know what like you get knocked up. Like I don't know what to tell you.
I was a little slow on the uptake there. I finally got it at the end.
Well,
I
since I said it, I didn't catch it either.
And yeah, no one else caught it, and I think everyone was wondering what I was laughing at, and it was all in my head. Yes, correct.
I got it.
So, in all honesty, for Chronicles, well, I'll talk about that once we get to me.
We'll get to all that. So, how about you, Carlos? Similar was Gino. Anything you want to add to what he said?
So similar with Gino, but I really didn't. I didn't really have the cash or funds. I was still a kid. I think I would say the first 3, the Castlevania series. Then eventually I borrowed. Actually, when I started working at Walmart, when I actually got the Symphony of the Night. That's because somebody was selling it for like $5, and they didn't like the game. They had a hard time with it, so I bought it.
Nice.
That's pretty good.
Good deal for you, man.
Yeah, I just enjoyed it, and those were the games that I actually were completed until ROMs came around. But that's a different topic.
So you haven't played any of the more recent stuff like the 3D games on N64 or PS2 or any of the handheld 2D scrollers?
No, the only ones are just those, and maybe the Super NES, like I think it's the Castlevania X.
So definitely the early stuff up through Symphony of the Night then.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out the 64 yet, but never had access to it. So.
Don't worry about it. Trust me. You can always watch videos on those. How about you, Frank?
All right. So I think next to Manny, I've played the most Castlevanias in our group. I've now played the first 3, thanks to, of course, ROMs, and now the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which I beat the first game just for the first time the other night, as I was mentioning. Never finished Simon's Quest. I did start a playthrough of that in anticipation for this. I'm stuck because I don't know where to go because the clues, as Mr. Bobby has mentioned before, are so obtuse, I think is the word you're using.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just have to look up a guide for that. I also started Dracula's Curse, which I've never finished before. I've, of course, played Super Castlevania 4. I played Dracula X, which is I like to call it a demake of Rondo of Blood because it really falls short as compared to Rondo. It's not a bad game. It's just compared to the original.
Sure.
It just falls short. And honestly, they took a step back because they went with the old school controls of the NES, where you can only whip in one direction, you're committed to a jump and this and that. And yeah, it brings back that original difficulty if you like that, but it still is a step back from the previous game on the same system.
Well, real quick then, how would you compare that Dracula X to, say, Super Castlevania, since they're on the same system?
Graphically, it's better. That's about it, though. I think it's shorter too. It's only got how many stages? I think it's got about 9 with the 3 alternate stages that it's got. Because I think it has like that was one thing it did different than Super Castlevania is it had alternating paths just like the original Rondo, but they're not really big differences. And honestly, even finishing that game is not very satisfying because when you beat the game, there are 3 endings depending on who you save. Because using different paths, you can save either Maria and Richter's, lady, I forgot what her name is, or both. And literally the only thing that changes is who shows up in the final credits scroll. So it's very not rewarding at all. And honestly, that's probably one of the hardest Dracula battles for the classic Castlevania, because you're on these pillars and there's just, the pits in between them, and he has, of course, 2 forms. He has his regular form, which shoots fireballs, and the big old dark matter
Ball of lightning.
energies. Yeah, exactly. And then after that, he turns into a demon, and he shoots these like huge waves of energy that just, pretty much if you're on a lower platform, then you can avoid by ducking. But if he's on one of the lower ones, it's over. So
Sounds very fair.
yeah, it's not. The only way I beat that game was with save states, which honestly I hate to say it, but I beat a lot of the original ones with save states because like I said, I didn't play them until later, and I'm not gonna be frustrated trying to just finish a 33-year-old game.
Yeah, don't worry about it, dude. I mean, I have not beaten any of the old ones the old-fashioned way. The only one in the first 2 generations of Castlevania I beat was Super Castlevania 4, and that was on my 3DS using save states, so don't feel bad.
Same here with the old ones, man. It's gonna be a lot of time if you were to train yourself to it'll be too time consuming.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about the end of these games, how many?
I'm not done. I'm not done. I did way more.
Sorry, my bad. It felt like an appropriate end to your conversation.
I've also played. I played the first one on Game Boy. I've played, which was the Castlevania Adventure. I never played Adventure 2 or Legends. I played both Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness, which, of course, Legacy of Darkness is really the version they wanted to release. I finished Lament of Innocence. I played Curse of Darkness, never finished it. I played, of course, Symphony of the Night. Can't forget that one. I played Chronicles, never finished that one. And I think the last one I played was Rondo of Blood, the PS4 version, because they released it with a double pack with Symphony of the Night and, of course, Rondo.
Yeah.
I did play Lords of Shadow, the first one, but not very much, but we can address that question later.
Cool. And what about you, Gino and Carlos? Have you guys beat every Castlevania game you have played, or there's some you left behind?
I would say the first 3 I did manage to beat. The ones that I mentioned at Symphony.
The old-fashioned way?
The old-fashioned way.
Wow.
Simon's Quest.
Congratulations.
So on that, I could say that the first time around that I played it, and I forgot to mention that, is actually in probably some memories, was Gino and John. We played it together. Took turns as kids. He probably doesn't remember. I just have this habit of remembering the old stuff for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I keep myself going. But to get back into that conversation, yeah, first time around we beat it as turns. Later I borrowed it from John, and I actually ran it through it myself and beat it as a kid because he had more time. But our friend John was the type, after gaming, let's play some basketball and soccer. So basketball, kickball, that's all we would do, man. So we wouldn't just be playing games. We stayed healthy in a sense.
That's good.
But getting into that thing is, those are the games I beat, Old Fashioned and Symphony of the Night, Old Fashioned.
Cool. Gino, what about you?
The first, kind of along with what Carlos is saying, 2 certainly. 2, people hate on 2, man, like because it was so different than the first, but the second one is brilliant, man. It's so brilliant. I can play it today. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy if you don't know what to do. It is frustrating. It was frustrating as kids, but there's just something that it does so right that I think every successive Castlevania doesn't quite get. But I mean, something like Symphony of the Night, which is like perfection. Yeah, I mean, I think they really hit it there. 3, Castlevania 3, I remember a distinct memory. I was really excited when it came out, and it was like around Thanksgiving. It was like November when it came out, and it was it was 30 years ago. My God. And I remember just playing 3, like renting it, of course, because I didn't have like all you. I didn't have money, and I would just rent everything. So I remember like it was for some reason I remember like Crocodile Dundee 2 and like playing 3 and like that. I think like it was like was on TV. So that's all I remember from like Thanksgiving of like 1990, the week before, just playing Castlevania 3. So, but I never beat it, so I need to finish that.
Mm.
Cool, man. Mike?
What about the games? Are you ready to move on to
I think we're ready for the next question.
All right. Okay, so Castlevania has been around since like the 80s, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So video games that have been around for that long, always, and it seems unavoidable that eventually they're going to dabble in 3D if series have been around for that long. So my question to you is, what's your take on the 2D versus 3D debate for Castlevania for that series at least? And your thoughts on that, Gino?
3D versus 2D. Like as far as the only ones that I think were really successful were the 3D ones. Anywhere were the what is it? The Lords of Shadow. I remember playing that like at E3, like on the show floor, and I was just blown away. I thought that was so neat. Whereas the ones that I had played before that, the PS2, PS2 iterations, those just, you know what, man, they were just boring. I was just yawning through the bulk of them. I need to go back to them and try again, but at that point, I mean, I bought them because they were Castlevania, but I've never sunk any time into them because I was just so bored by the title screen that I never went back to them. But I would say Lords of Shadow is really great. I would prefer always 2D, but 3D is not a complete disaster,
Just depending on how it's done.
Right.
What about you, Frank?
Obviously, there's more 2D games than 3D games, and I think the reason for that is because people overall still prefer the 2D games. The transition to 3D was very rough, as the first game being Castlevania 64, which was, received very lukewarm, and that game is very flawed. I don't think it's a bad game. It just, with Castlevania 64, the camera's working against you. There's a lot of slowdown. I mean, there's times when there's frame rate drops that actually screw you over because the platforming in that game is the most challenging thing. Like the enemies, the bosses, no. I mean, you just learn the pattern and you're good. I actually think it's one of the easiest games to complete as far as enemies go, but the camera was a nightmare. They did kind of fix it in Legacy of Darkness, but it still wasn't great. To me, the first great 3D game was Lament of Innocence, which, if you played it all the way through, Gino, it actually has a lot of symphony elements. It did have that Metroidvania in 3D exploration that it encouraged. To me, it was like a 3D symphony without the RPG elements as far as leveling up. And their leveling up technique was really weird too. Not necessarily leveling up, but to unlock new combos, it was like random. And I think I don't remember if it was even the strategy guide, but something literally said they'll unlock when they're ready to be unlocked. And there's no way to grind through it or cheese it in any way. I mean, I think it is map completion. I think it's tied to that, and also the amount of enemies that you encounter. But I mean, other than that, there's a lot of combos. That game still looks really pretty, I think. Curse of Darkness, when I first played it, I was expecting another Lament, and they introduced familiars and leveling up and all that. And I wasn't too crazy about that because it felt very resource management heavy. And at that time, I just wasn't really wanting to do that. But I know the story itself is pretty great because that's what they were using as the basis for the Castlevania, what's it called? The series. Like, that was one of the main influences on it.
You're talking about
Lords
the
of
Netflix
Shadow-
series?
The Netflix series, yes. Other 3D games, I'm trying to think. What other 3D games? Lords of Shadow, of course, the reboot. I played the first one just a little bit, but we can talk about that in a bit. Overall, I think Castlevania actually lends itself pretty well to 3D. It just, there's not enough games to really get people interested in it to where, I think Castlevania just kind of burned the bridge for it. And as far as the stories go, I think they're actually pretty good because they were able to expand more on the lore. Because Lament of Innocence is a prequel. It's actually the first in the chronological main storyline. So
And that's the PS2 one, right?
yes, it was the first one on the sixth generation consoles.
Yeah, that's considered 6th gen.
So yeah, it's 2D is better, but 3D has definitely it still is pretty good. It's just it can't compare.
Yeah, I think what hurt those PS2 versions, especially the what was the second one called again? Curse of Darkness, is it came out very late in the PS2's lifetime. It was 2005, and by then the PS2 was on its way out because 2006 PS3 came out. And then of course you had other games in that same category like God of War, which were far more popular. So unfortunately, those two Castlevania games were not on the same level of gameplay or as entertainment value as a God of War or the games of its type. So unfortunately, it kind of got swept under the rug until Lords of Shadows came out. Then people kind of revisited it. But even then, Lords of Shadows, after 2 main games and a third handheld game, they haven't done anything with that series since, aside from the collector's release.
Carlos, I know you said you mostly stick to like the original ones, but do you have any like thoughts on the 3D, or if you ever tried any that you can compare to how you feel about it?
So as far as the 3D games, the only ones I was really introduced to was Lord of the Shadow. I skipped 64 because I didn't have access to 64 or any other systems. I bought certain games, but I see when I got Lord of the Shadow, I thought was composed very well. It did blend. The style of jumping and going to one place to another was pretty good. I liked the way it worked. I liked the system and the way it worked in general. But comparing that to 2D, I think with the NES games and the Super Nintendo games, the composers, the artists, they put their heart into those games to make those soundtracks work and blend. So I would still say 2D is a lot better.
Okay. So like it's mostly like for the roots of Castlevania is what mostly stands out for it. And you, Bobby?
Well, for me, I mean, I think their strength is in the 2D area, but it's like, I'm wearing my Metroid shirt because I'm a huge Metroid fan. I got Super Metroid behind me. And, we are going to mention a little bit about Metroidvanias, which are influenced from both Metroid and Castlevania. But, Metroid, Nintendo got a team together that successfully translated Metroid to a 3D platform. So it's very possible to do it. It's just a matter of getting the right team of people where it can be done. So, yeah, I don't think 3D Castlevania is impossible. I think Lords of Shadow was a fine example, though to me, it wasn't like if you're looking for a Symphony of the Night type of gameplay in 3D, I don't think Lords of Shadow quite got there. I think it had some of those elements of it, but it was more so a hack and slash adventure rather than an explorative adventure where you're upgrading your skills and your character. And I think if they were to do something more that route, then it might be better. I'm sorry, Frank, what were we going to add?
No, I was going to say that's why you should play Lament of Innocence.
Yeah, actually, I did buy that copy last year after we were going through our Castlevania kick, and I played through 4 and a couple others. I bought that one so I could play through it, and I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's all. You bought it on the PSN, right?
No, I have the PS2 version.
Oh, okay.
I was able to get a physical copy. I mean, it's not hard to come by.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually really the one that you can find the cheapest. I mean, you can find it for like less than $10 complete. But I was gonna say it's probably better to play the PS3 PSN version just because the load times are a little better, and also it's got the HDMI already built in. So.
Cool. So everyone kind of like agrees that probably 2D is the best because that's the root of Castlevania. But I don't know, can we all agree also that it's very versatile as a series, that it does kind of work in a way of 3D, at least more for like storytelling maybe if they want, or like cutscenes or how they develop it?
Yeah, so I think Frank and I have had this discussion on several times where all the 3D games, they have pretty solid stories. they don't really seem to have stories that make you go, wow, well, why did they do this? This is stupid. And Lords of Shadow we'll get into a little bit later because there's debate on that. But at least with those original, like on the N64 and PS2, you could tell they put their teams behind on the effort to do the stories. Because even those Castlevania 64 and not Curse of Darkness, what was it?
Yeah, Curse of Darkness.
Yeah,
Lament of Innocence?
No, but the other N64.
Legacy of Darkness.
Legacy of Darkness. Those stories are all interesting stories, and they add. And like when you guys watch the Gamer Thumb, he adds those in there. Those are some of those stories were things I hadn't heard, and when he goes through them, I'm like, oh wow, this is interesting that they handled it this way. So I think they fit in. I think more so the teams that put the gameplay together were lacking either in experience or they didn't have enough time, whatever the case may be. Because even the Legacy of Darkness
works or not, but they're not sure yet.
And then like Legacy of Darkness, it would have been nice if they had, like Frank's right, it was their version of what they really wanted to do, but it was more so adding in the additional assets and characters and storylines, but the gameplay was all pretty much functioning the same, which means it still had a lot of the same problems. If they had taken maybe an extra year to try to fix the issues, maybe they could have released a better N64 version of that game overall, but it is what it is. They learned their lessons. I think the PS2 versions are better, but again, you had so many other games that were performing at a higher level, like God of War, that it just kind of got missed.
Do you think kind of why maybe that's why Lords of Shadow went in that direction? Because of the previous of like N64 3D and all the other 3D ones that they wanted to go more directly kind of hack and slash, get to point A to point B kind of style? To avoid any other type of problems they might might reoccur from the previous 3D games?
Well, I think it's a reflection of its time where a lot of Japanese companies were trying to design games that were appeal to Westerners. So it's very much in a Western style of gameplay. We've talked about that on previous episodes with Capcom and other companies. Yeah. And I think that's the same case with Konami and Lords of Shadow.
Cool.
Yeah, and to me, for the 3D Castlevanias, the only one that's really like, I wouldn't even say bad, like just not great, is the Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness. Because the PS2 ones, I mean, yeah, the other companies had done it better, but the storytelling is still really good. The gameplay is solid, and I don't know. I just think a lot of people just kind of wrote those off, either because they didn't like the transition to 3D, or they weren't trying to, there was the 3D mechanics that you had to learn. So.
All right. So moving on to our next question. So we're gonna target the de facto Castlevania game. I think when everyone thinks of Castlevania, they often refer to Symphony of the Night as the game that defines the Castlevania series. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and just read the question the way I wrote it. Symphony of the Night is credited with popularizing the Metroidvania gameplay style. For those of you not familiar with Metroidvania, again, we had discussed it, or we talked about a moment ago, where Super Metroid in particular and Symphony of the Night influenced that Metroidvania explorative style where you find things and upgrade your character, and in the case of Symphony of the Night, level up. So has your experience with Symphony of the Night led you to play more games in that vein? So if you play through Symphony of the Night, now do you continue to play games that are in that gameplay style? And Carlos, we can start with you. If Gino's done moving boxes or doing whatever he's doing.
No, yeah, I think with Symphony of the Night, it has led me to play other games. I would say the first games I played after Symphony of the Night, they go into at least a 3D style, or not 3D style, but in that continuation style would be Exenberg and Bloodstained Ritual. And again, Bloodstained Ritual is something that I always hear about from you guys, and that's when I kind of dabbled on it. That remake was the first one I played, and I actually made an episode on it.
What remake?
The 16-bit version or 8-bit?
The Curse of the Moon, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's not a remake. It's a side story.
Oh, okay. That was the first one I dabbled on first.
What did
on the Xbox.
What did you think of Axiom Verge?
I liked it, man. It's its own little realm, really. It's very sci-fi, very old school sci-fi. It's like if I was watching like the old, I'm not dogging on it, right? I'm just saying it has that B-movie feel, but in a very experimental way where you really get into watching this type of.
How about Curse of the Moon? Did you get to finish Curse of the Moon?
I played bits of it just for that one. I really got to get back on it as far as finishing up the game.
Okay.
I kind of got I got stuck with the Medusa, or one of these bloody enemies. I don't really call their proper name. That's where I got stuck.
Frank looks like he's trying to remember that villain.
Well, there's not even a Medusa-looking thing in the game. Like, there's a similar type enemy that has like it's an eye with a flowing tail, but I don't know like what you're talking about at all.
She was the female. I gotta, like I said, when I played that game, it was a couple of months back, maybe a year.
You're right. It's probably that thing that's probably similar to it, you know.
So I played it a couple months back. Oh, really? How long ago? Like September.
I haven't tried it at all yet, so.
Yeah, I played Curse of the Moon. I hadn't finished it, but I played it. Again, they released a version on the 3DS, and that's the version I played some through. I know, Frank, you've beat it more than once, right?
Many times, yeah. It's not even a proper. It's not a proper Metroidvania. It's more like Dracula's Curse, where it has branching paths, but that's about it.
Okay, so it's very limited in that. So how about you then, Frank? Have you taken a taste for Metroidvania style games since playing Symphony of the Night?
I've played a few, not very many though. I wouldn't say that because I love that gameplay style that I went out searching for it. Like I watched you play Guacamelee, but that's not a game that I would play, even though it is a very popular Metroidvania. I'd say the ones that I've played that are in that style are obviously Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is the spiritual successor to Castlevania. Blasphemous, which is also a Metroidvania. I can't really think of any others. I never played Axiom Verge. I know Super Metroid, that's one of your favorites, Bobby, but I've never played that game proper because I never got into Metroid. I just, didn't have the games growing up, and then by the time I got old enough, I think I've only really played Prime, the first one, and I didn't get very far in it.
But I remember you asking me to do gameplay so you could watch it later on.
Yeah, I mean, certain games, it's like I love the idea of them as opposed to loving them to play them. And, like a lot of people knock watching playthroughs, but it's like, well, I mean, if you watch talk shows, if you watch movies, that's people doing stuff that you can do. So I don't see what the big issue is of watching playthroughs. I mean, there's no way that I'm going to play a lot of these games, so I'll absolutely watch somebody else play it if I'm interested in it without wanting to get frustrated. Right. So those are the only two that really come to mind as far as Metroidvanias go. I mean, what are some really popular Metroidvania games that you guys can think of?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was about to say, because when you said Metroidvania, I totally just was focused on Castlevania. So I did play Metroid Another M on the Game Boy Advance, but I played it through emulator and actually finished that one.
That was Another M. That was
Fusion?
Fusion, thank you. That was Metroid Fusion.
Yeah, so I beat Fusion. I like that one. It was pretty cool. And then I did play the original and the Super Metroid. I like them. I like the style of the games. I
enjoyed Fusion. I just couldn't beat it.
Yeah. I like the soundtrack on it. That's why it really was very techno-ish to me. So I enjoyed it. Yeah. The soundtrack gets me. I will enjoy the game more.
Yeah, I think looking back through the history of Metroidvania games, really Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night, and then of course other Metroid games that came after like Fusion and the remake of the original Metroid, Metroid Zero Mission, and then of course the Prime games. Those have been the ones that are usually targeted. I think the whole Metroidvania thing had a resurgence with indie games in the last 10, 15 years, especially games like Axiom Verge and Hollow Knight and Guacamelee. I know like the Toho series that our friend George is really popular with, they have that Luna Knights game, which is very much in the vein of a Metroidvania. So I'm just thinking that maybe that gameplay style, lends itself to being able to create a very diverse 2D world without having to worry about developing 3D assets, which can be very time consuming and or ultimately, very, very expensive in the long run for small companies. So I think maybe that's why Metroidvanias are very popularized. And then you'll see that there's a lot of Metroidvania that are games labeled Metroidvanias that have added, gameplay elements that never existed in those original Metroidvania style games, and it continues to evolve to this day. So I mean, it makes you wonder if really that Metroidvania moniker fits anymore, just because the games are so different from their original concepts. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I go look left and right for Metroidvania games, and like Frank, I played Blasphemous, and that's a game I fell in love with because it's right up my alley in that Metroidvania style. So is Guacamelee. I beat that game on multiple occasions. On multiple systems. I mean, it's a lot of fun to play, and I just really enjoy that style. But Gino, we're waiting to hear from you now, sir, if you're ready. He just remuted himself. There you go.
Is that better?
Now you're not muted.
Okay, good. It's good because like I was eating this apple while you were talking, and I was trying to like speed eat it, so like when you asked me the question, I wouldn't be like crunching on it. But then you asked me the question, and I couldn't turn the mic on, so there's always something. But like, what's the question? Oh yeah, Metroidvania. Like, okay, watch. I love Metroidvania, and I love like Super Metroid. Okay, I really do. But at this point, it's becoming like that. Like what is it, that plot point of like Insomnia? It's like, motherfucker, like I gotta go and like find all my shit again. Like, are you serious? Can't we do this in a more organic way? Like I don't know, I really like it. Obviously, like Symphony of the Night, I mean, that's brilliant, and Super Metroid is brilliant, and I'm gonna go and probably right after this go purchase Blasphemous, because you guys are just raving about it. And play that. But it's like when you went to, I wouldn't say that Prime is kind of like a Metroidvania. I guess it is Metroid Prime, but yeah, I start rolling my eyes when it's like, oh, I've lost all my equipment, what to do now? Oh, like, God. But yeah, I like them. I don't think I went out and sought out more of that, because that always just kind of makes me roll my eyes, and it's like, I gotta go get everything, even when I know it's coming. So yeah, that's my my take on it.
Well, I will agree. Those early Metroidvanias, like wasn't so much Super Metroid, but Metroid Prime did it, as well as Symphony of the Night, where you start off the game super powerful, and then you run into either a situation or a villain that then takes away your powers. But I don't think that's an issue that occurs now with those games. But to me, that's just more of a storytelling contrivance as opposed to an issue with the game itself. But I do agree that the games that call themselves Metroidvanias that get too stuck in the making you veer off the map just to find things rather than making it feel more organic, like, oh, I defeated this enemy, now I ran into this thing that I needed. I think that makes more sense. So it can be hard to develop those Metroidvania games if you just kind of throw things around the map.
Yeah. They do it really well because it's with the exploring of the map, like you were just saying, it has like a good reward system at a good pacing for you to keep like progressing and wanting to get the next item or the next upgrade,
Do you really believe that though? I mean,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, about working today, I mean, probably not this. It won't be the same if you try to do it too much, but it still could be done properly,
Blasphemous being the best example, I think.
Probably.
But I get your point on saying like it's kind of weird if they like you start off super strong and then they get rid of it. But I think back in the day that was just to show you the max potential of that character before stripping it away from you. And then I guess they just kind of repeated it for every sequel. So.
Well, and actually, you can bug out Symphony of the Night. So in your second playthrough, if you in the beginning area before death takes your items, if you get hit by the wolf, you can go flying through that screen and keep all your stuff at the beginning.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that glitch.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I don't know. I definitely like it. It's something but I can't do it all the time. So I couldn't be playing like these Metroidvania games all the time because I would just be irritated that they just took my stuff again. It's like, God damn it, So yeah, but I mean, it makes sense because if you're overpowered at the beginning, what the hell are you doing? I mean, you're just walking left to right, so that's just Contra.
Yeah, you'll be playing some boring ass Superman game or something.
Right. Well, hey, wait, like Contra's great, but you know what I mean? Like if they took away Lance's guns, it's like, well, I guess I'll punch these guys out in the woods, But anyway.
Yeah. I would think too, like the Symphony of Night led me to play more Metroidvanias because it just that game actually led me to play more Castlevania games. Okay, so Lords of Shadows and its sequels attempted to reimagine the Castlevania storyline. Do you feel the games did the series justice? And which storyline do you prefer? And would you recommend these games? Why or why not? And I would personally recommend them. And I Lords of Shadows is one of my favorites. So I was wondering if you had a strong opinion on this one, Carlos.
Lord of Shadow. So I only got to play the first one. I never ventured into the second one. I'm sure me and you discussed that a couple of times. But the first one, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was. Yeah, they were remaking something from the traditional Castlevania in a sense. They're trying to reimagine it. And the storyline was a little bit flawed. I like the characters though. The gaming style is great. I think Hideo Kojima even threw that ode from Ocelot. Whenever you face one of the bad, I guess a certain bad guy, he says, "Come at me," just like if it was you're facing off with Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid or in any of the Metal Gears. But overall, the game was cool. The music was great, though. I liked the music. The composition was cool. But then again, yeah, the storylines were a little bit different. It wasn't as extensive as the classic Castlevania series. We were used to them. Changing that kind of threw me off a little bit.
Okay.
As far as recommendation, I'd still recommend them. Why not? Try them out, and then you get your own opinion on it.
What about you, Gina?
Gino?
Okay, what about you, Frank?
No, he unmuted himself.
Okay, there you go, Gina.
Okay.
I'm unmuted. Oh shit. Okay, sorry. Well, I mean, the stories aren't anything to write home about. Let's be honest. They're pretty run of the mill.
How are they running the mill? Do you know the full story for Lords of Shadow?
I mean, this is just my opinion, right? So,
well, but I'm asking.
There's nothing based in fact here,
Well, how are you having an opinion if you don't even know the story?
Are we talking about Lords of Shadow exclusively?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, have you played Lords of Shadow?
Yeah, I only played a little bit of it. Yeah, the story's cool. Next question.
Wait, you said you only played a little bit, so you don't know the whole story?
No, I don't know the whole story.
Like, I got the idea of it.
I mean, you get the broad strokes,
Okay,
home, Frank.
So I'm guessing that you prefer the original storyline then, right, Gino?
Yeah, I mean, they're about the same.
Okay, would you recommend it to somebody?
Yeah, sure, it's fun. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, thanks, Gina.
You're welcome. I'm gonna go back on mute.
You're not muted.
I know, that's why. I told you, just give me a minute here.
Why is it so hard? Is it because you're on eBay while we're doing all this?
No, I'm here in front of you.
That's fine.
Oh.
It's all good.
All right, give us your opinion, Frank.
Okay, so the gameplay, to me, that's what was nothing to write home about, especially having played the previous 3D Castlevanias. I wouldn't even say the gameplay was bad. To me, the gameplay was boring, and I compared it to God of War, or at least that's what it felt like. It felt like Castlevania God of War. And so right away I was turned off because I think it had an identity crisis, like you had mentioned before, is that the Western audience is really who they were kind of developing the game for. And for me, it fell flat. I think storyline wise, the storyline with the way they redid some of the characters and redid the origin of Dracula and everything. I actually thought that was pretty interesting.
Mhm.
I actually recommend watching like the cutscenes of those games if you don't like the gameplay, because that's still a pretty good storyline in and of itself. Especially, I think they actually went bigger, in all honesty, than the original storyline, because slight spoiler, but the big bad is actually Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to. Do they call him? It's Satan or Lucifer?
I think they just
And
refer to him as Lucifer in the game.
Yeah. So he's actually the big bad as opposed to Dracula. I mean, Dracula is still antagonist, but to me, I like the way that they redid that, just because it was a different take, and I prefer the original storyline because it is so vast. You know, they've built up so much lore, despite having to do a lot of retconning and everything. But I don't think that Lords of Shadow is anything to throw away. I think the story is definitely interesting enough to give it a try. The gameplay wise, though, I couldn't really recommend it. To me, it was just really boring. It just didn't really stand out at all, and it wasn't bad gameplay. It didn't grab my attention. So, could I recommend it? I mean, for me, no. But I think, you know, if you go in with an open mind, you should definitely try it.
Did any of you guys try Mirror of Fate?
That was 2D, right? The 2D
Yeah.
sequel.
Came out
First
on
on the
3DS.
3DS, and then in the Castlevania Lords of Shadow collection.
Mhm.
Which actually, I do want to get a copy of that. I do want to get the Lords of Shadow games because I do, especially with Mike B advocating for so much, I really do feel like I should give it a proper playthrough, just because, like I said, I do also like the story.
But that Mirror of Fate has that old school style Metroidvania gameplay to it.
Mhm.
Is it Metroidvania or just is it very linear?
No, it's Metroidvania. It has the whole exploring the castle and everything like that. It's completely like that, and it just, of course, it bridges the gap between the Lords of Shadow 1 and 2, like
Okay.
the filler story.
Well, in that one you play as multiple characters, right? You play as Trevor,
Yes.
and you play as Alucard, and what was the name of the main character?
Simon. I think.
Oh, Simon.
Yeah, you play
and
as
then,
Simon.
and then, but what's the name of the main character again?
For Mirror of Fate, Trevor. I believe it's Trevor in that one.
No, I'm sorry. I meant from the first Lord of Shadow, for 1 and 2.
Gabriel.
Gabriel, that's his name.
SME Gabriel.
Well, speaking of Gabriel, he loves that first Castlevania, though. Funny.
So in your case, Carlos, you only played the first Lord of Shadow, right? You didn't play this.
Right. I played the first one. I wanted to get the DLC, but again, didn't have much funds at that point in time.
And Mike, you played through them all?
I didn't finish Lords of Shadow 2 because I like the change when they went to the hack and slash. Frank dislikes that, but everyone has their own taste. So I enjoyed the hack
I
and
don't
slash
dislike hack and slash. I dislike
for
that
Castlevania.
particular one.
Yes, for that one. And so what was weird, they did the hack and slash still, but they kind of did an open world. And it wasn't more in the Metroidvania style where you go to certain particular areas to try to discover. It kind of felt like open world, and I kind of disliked it for that, and I couldn't like push myself to finish the second one. So I don't even know how it ends for that series though. But I do really enjoy the first Lords of Shadow, and the Mirror of Fate was really fun too, which is also available on like PS4 now, right?
I'm not sure. Is it part of that collection? Is that collection on PS4?
I think it's
The
on
Lords of
PS4 because
Shadow?
it was originally on 3DS, and now it's on PS4 and Steam and stuff like that. I think, right?
I don't think it's on PS4. I know it is on Steam.
Well, then it might be Xbox One then.
Oh, gonna have to
Yeah, it
look
might
into
be
that
the
one.
one.
Okay, yeah.
So then, Mike, since you probably have the most experience here with Lord of Shadows, what would, comparing the two storylines, do you have a preference of one over the other? Do you prefer the newer one versus the older one, or do you think they both have their place?
Of course, they both have their place, but I prefer the Lords of Shadow one just because I guess more of the theatrical like cutscenes and everything that was really cool, and that's what I like the storytelling. And they were imagining like they made some changes, but it was nothing you could be like, oh, well, that's just completely stupid. It was just like, oh, yeah, this kind of fills out. This is pretty cool, you know? And I guess for the older ones, since I didn't get into like Castlevania till later, I guess it was more of me having to dig deep into lore. Or what was that YouTuber you mentioned, Frank? Frank showed me that video about that. So
Gamer Thumb.
That's the Gamer Thumb. So then it's like, okay, I didn't know that much about it. So I think just the experience of actually being able to take in all that information from this new story while I'm playing was really, what I enjoyed most about it. Because with the old ones, it's like I have no idea what's going on when I was like trying them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that is kind of the tricky thing with the older games because it has a long history. I mean, a lot of the games they obviously don't take place chronologically. Some take place earlier, some take place later. So then you end up having storylines retconned, or you end up having characters that you didn't know existed suddenly they exist, and that's part of the issue with developing games like that over a long period of time. We haven't even touched on the handheld games. That's part of the original series. There were 3 of them on GBA and 3 of them on the DS that were 2 distinct trilogies. And the one in particular at the end on the DS pretty much in a way concluded the main storyline for Castlevania, which is probably what led to them rebooting Lords of Shadow. Because, spoiler alert, when they concluded that DS version, it turns out that you've been the incarnation of Dracula this whole time, but now he's a good person. He's helping the world instead of destroying it. Kind of like what's been alluded to in the Netflix series, which we'll talk about, I guess, in a little bit, in which, Dracula, he may be evil, but there's a reason why he's evil. He wasn't born that way, and that's kind of the way Lords of Shadow plays it as well. So I guess trying to bring sympathy for the devil, so to speak.
Well, I think what's it called? What's his name? Soma Cruz. He's good, but they're trying to resurrect the soul of Dracula in him, and he's still bad.
With Soma Cruz being the main character?
Yes.
I thought he ended up being good.
No, he was good, but the thing is, like, he had Dracula's soul in him,
right?
And he ends up he's the one who ends up fighting the chaos realm itself at the end, but it's because they were trying to resurrect Dracula.
Right.
Again.
But I thought he was able to defeat it, and then in a way it's like he's being not rehabilitated.
Reformed?
Thank you. Reformed. There's a better word for it, but making up for his grievances against man. But
I don't know. I mean, in all honesty, that's just from what I've seen in the what's it called, the
game
timeline.
Yeah,
because to me, I never played those games, but it seemed more like Soma Cruz was his own person. Just he had Dracula's soul.
Mm-hmm.
So he was supposed to be awakened inside Soma because Soma was the host.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen him too. I mean, I can't say for 100% certainty. But anyway, I'm sorry. So just a quick question. Do you have a favorite character, and who is that favorite character and why? Gino, get off mute. I guess he's not going to do what I say.
No, he's probably just trying to figure it out.
All right, Frank, we'll start with you then.
It's really hard for me to answer this.
Mm-hmm.
I think simple answer to this question would be Richter, because he's in a game I really love. Well, 2 games actually, but he's got a lot of personality, especially compared to how Milquetoast Simon was and Trevor was. Granted, they were limited to the storytelling that the 8-bit NES could tell. So I'd say probably Richter.
How about you, Carlos? Do you have a favorite character from any of the games?
So I have 2, and it's just one from one sequel to the other. So I would say Simon, just because that was the first character I was introduced to. And he had a good personality. Yeah, he was very straightforward with what he had to do. to save his version of the story, take on Dracula. Then of course, if I go to Dracula's Curse, I would say Grant. So I thought at first, honestly, because I was graphic wise, I thought Grant was a hunchback man, but I ended up finding out that he's actually a pirate with bad posture that climb walls. But those were my two favorite characters in general. I like those two characters. Those to me were memorable.
Very cool. I guess we're going to leave Gino out of this one. Gino. All right. Next question, Mike.
All right. So we've already talked about the games, favorite characters, all the stuff like that. So,
Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Oh my God.
Look, I got it. I got voice now. All right. Anyway. I mean, I don't know, man.
They're
They're all
gonna make
pretty
me
milky.
edit this like crazy.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Don't edit
You know.
any of it out. Just leave it all in.
I don't know, man. Like, it comes down to, what is it now? Like, I like Simon because that's the first one that I was introduced to. I like Richter too because I mean, essentially now it's like which amiibo looks more exciting, you know? And Richter clearly has the upper hand. But yeah, actually, I'd say Alucard, man. Alucard's awesome. I mean, he's just beyond cool. So that's who I would say.
Alucard.
Cool. Thank you for popping back in.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm going to put it on mute.
Don't put it on mute because you're going to answer this next question first.
Oh, okay.
What Castlevania media beyond the games did you guys enjoy, if any? And we'll start with Frank.
No, we're supposed to start with Gino.
Go first.
Right?
I was saying to start with Gino, remember?
He's unmuted.
Go ahead, Gino. Lead off.
No, I don't think there's really that much. I mean, there's there's the cartoons, and then there's like Captain N. So there's not a lot of like, I'm sure maybe there was a comic, but yeah, I guess I would say like the Netflix series is pretty cool. But I will say, and this will drive Frank crazy, I loved like Captain N. I loved like Super Mario World cartoons. I loved all that stuff because I was there for it, right?
Nostalgia is overrated.
Well, I mean, so is like, I don't know, being above nostalgia. So yeah, I would say
I'm
I
not
love
above
those two things.
nostalgia, but I can recognize bad shit from my childhood.
Yeah, I didn't say it was like, a masterpiece. I'm just saying I still enjoy it. There's some kind of weird charm about it.
No.
So that's my answer. I'm gonna mute myself again.
Wait, so obviously the most popular, well-known media outside the games is the Netflix series. So have you seen all 3 seasons, and really quick take on what you think what they've done with it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, a lot of people said that like the 3rd season was a little bit like a slow burn, and I'll agree. I mean, season 2 was, it was just there was so much at stake. But I really like the way in season 3 how they kind of, rebuilt, kind of reshaped the direction that it's going. So I'm interested to see what happens next. Sure.
Cool. Thank you, Gino.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mike, go ahead. Who are you going to ask next?
Oh, yeah, Frank. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. I just give Gino a hard time. It's all in good fun. No, I totally get it. It's like, if anything, the Captain N cartoons, they are very the representative of that late 80s, early 90s, like where they were trying to market to be all hip and cool. And so it's very cheesy. It's very cornball. But, it was, as a kid, you would love that stuff. You know what I mean? And seeing Alucard as a skateboarding rebellious teenager, it's so over the top and ridiculous. But I'm sure that they're, besides Gino, are fans of, that media back then. I personally never saw it. I had to go back and actually watch clips of it on YouTube, and I don't want to say I cringed because I think that word has kind of lost all meaning now with the internet. I'd say I felt that secondhand embarrassment for Simon because he's a wimp. I'll put it mildly. He's a wimp in Captain N and really annoying. But the Netflix series, which is definitely, I think, the most well-known media beyond the games, I think it did a really good job in the first 2 seasons. And the 3rd season I have a lot of issues with, mostly because it's like they got these like 14-year-old boys who've never had who've never seen, like any sort of nudity in real life to write these characters who have a lot of potential, but like the actual delivery of those scenes, like just the way they came out, are just so bad. It's really bad. And I understand what they're trying to do. Part of it kind of feels like filler, but part of it is they're really trying to expand on the series itself so that there's more that they can explore in the 4th season. And I think that part is interesting, like with the vampire court with the women. I think that's really, really cool, especially because they introduce a lot of things. I mean, just out of pure blind spot, I didn't even think about the fact that they had to actually wage war on humanity. It's like, because you play the games and you're this lone warrior who's going through fighting, Dracula's forces and the forces of darkness, all that stuff, but you don't actually think of the logistics and how there's strategy and all this stuff. And so I really love the way they did that. And the Vampire Court, that was really cool too. The animation is really good. I'm glad that they didn't hold back, and there's cursing. To me, like, they made it for a mature audience because it's made for people like us, people in their 30s who grew up with it. But the first season was good. The second season is amazing. The 3rd season, I think, is the weakest with the most filler. But I do want to see where they're going with it in the 4th season, especially with some of those characters. I think the character representation for Trevor and Sypha and Alucard are really well done. The choices that they made storyline wise in season 3, there's some issues there with Alucard. And then also with Hector from Curse of Darkness, I don't like the way they redid his character because he's fighting, the forces of darkness in Curse of Darkness, which, I mean, this is still before that part of the storyline, but they really just kind of neutered his character. He's just this whiny, emasculated kind of nothing person. And to me, that's not even a good character. Like, it'd be one thing to be flawed and weak, but he's not even flawed and weak. He's a whipping boy that just he's not even really serving a purpose other than to show away how they're going to get more demons. That's what it felt like to me. So those are my thoughts.
How about you, Carlos?
So I would say, I guess, going back to the media and the games, I say Captain N, of course, I grew up on it. It was a cheesy series. I mean, as far as Simon Belmont's concerned, he reminded me of a humanized Launchpad McQuack without the charm, without the humor. He's just like Frank said, he was a big old coward. He'd hide behind even Link and Kid Icarus. Mega Man would put up a better fight in his low boy style. But as far as other medias, like I played Kid Dracula. I liked it. It was just a take on Alucard, but as a real little kid trying to defend his realm versus scary aliens in a sense, because they were real goofy aliens to play with. And actually, there was one more game where Simon Belmont does come out, and I consider this game a collaboration of Smash Brothers, but without the Smash. It's called YY World. And you had characters like Simon Belmont you had to rescue to use them to fight other characters. Even Mikey from Goonies comes out in it, and a bunch of other characters. I keep going extensively on it. As far as Castlevania, the Netflix series. I like the Netflix series. I agree with Frank. The first 2 series are very strong representations. The seasons. Thank you. And season 3, of course, was more of a Yeah, they just kind of went into too much for each character. I mean, Alucard, I don't think we wanted. I was used to the classic Symphony of the Night, not having to know what Alucard's preferences were, why they went into his sexuality. That's something. I mean, it's an adult thing, I guess. It's cool, but something I didn't expect. Breaking down the characters from what they, so you get frankly know more about, like, Curse of Darkness with Hector. That guy was whiny. That was a whiny character. The other characters, like the Belmonts, they were perfectly fine. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to season 4 and see what they bring up, what they bring to the table.
Yeah, I think part of what hurts season 3 is, particularly with Alucard and Hector, is okay. So you watch a season and you expect character development, but Alucard and Hector both ended where they started. Their characters did not change. They just introduced more pain into their lives. And in no way did that help their character become a better person or a worse person. They're exactly the same. That's why those parts are very weak. That's why those parts feel like filler. The parts with like Trevor and Sypha helping out that village, especially because there's an issue going on, that allows for character development because you get to see how Sypha and Trevor play off of each other and continue developing their relationship. Or like Frank mentioned with the development of the storyline with the 4 vampire mistresses running the vampire, whatever you want to call, council. You get to see that development of who these characters are and how they interact and what their plans are for the long run. I think the other thing that hurt season 3 is there was no one story thread to link them all together. There was just 4 separate stories being told at once, and you were expecting it to come together towards the end, which never happened. So we don't know where they're going with part 4. It's like this was all a prelude to set something up coming up later, and it doesn't feel fair when you don't know what's coming. Then you feel like you're missing out on something, and I think that's what hurt season 3, because season 1 and 2 had a specific direction they were going, and all those threads came together to finalize the story in 2 parts. But season 3 doesn't feel that way, because even at the end of season 1, you knew where it was going. You knew what was coming together. So I don't know. I mean, hopefully with season 4 they'll fix that up. But recently I heard that the showrunner for season 4, who's a comic book artist or writer, Warren Ellis, left the show. Now they are going to do a season 4, but he's the guy who was running the shows and helping direct the storylines, and he left the show because of unfortunately, particularly for the women involved, that there were allegations of sexual misconduct. I don't know the details of what was going on. I don't know what he's accused of doing and how much fact or fiction there is to this. We've been hearing a lot of cases over the years where people, particularly with men in power, taking advantage of their positions, and that seems to be the case here. And so I do not have one opinion one way or the other because I don't know the facts. But if he did what he did, yeah, he should not be running the show, even as good an artist as he is. Because there are plenty of other good people that can take his place and help run the show that needs. But what we do know is we are getting a 4th season, regardless of him leaving the show. The question is will that season be enough for Netflix to then keep it going? Because Netflix has been notorious for closing shows down after 2 or 3 seasons, despite how popular they are. I mean, look at the Marvel series that we had that were really good, but part of the issue was, Marvel being bought out by Disney. But really the other thing is the shows were getting more expensive and the amount of viewers was narrowing because people weren't willing to commit to a very long story form of multiple seasons of having to follow. Because if you look at Daredevil, if you're going to watch season 3 of Daredevil, well, you got to watch season 1 and 2. And some people may not be willing to make that commitment to watching all those seasons of that show.
The Defenders.
Well, and the Defenders, and it's the same thing with the other series as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think that was a problem with Castlevania and Netflix with season 3, and I think that's the place where Netflix finds themselves. So I was surprised they continued with a season 4, considering the way season 3 went. But I think it is also necessary if they're going to close any story threads. But I wouldn't be surprised if after season 4, that's it, they're done with it, and they move on to something else. And well, before I bring up this other stuff, we'll pass it off to Mike if you had anything to add about your opinions on these things.
Mainly that Castlevania show, I totally got drawn into it right away. I think Trevor was the main attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Like once it starts, his characters, you're just very intrigued and like why he's kind of bitter or a little bit more like, it seems like he's in a funk the whole time. But then, of course, the way they're laying it out is then you learn about the everybody knows about the Belmont family, but being excommunicated from the church. So then it kind of shows like why he's that certain way. So I think the character development's really good, and like you were saying earlier, where season 3 kind of dragged, because I also like how they did Alucard. I really like how they portrayed how he's just like a lonely person, and I really like that, and like sympathetic towards him about his situation, and then the need for him to like he has to kill his own father. But like you were saying, with the 3rd season, it dragged out because we already got that information from the first 2 seasons, and maybe on the first few episodes of season 3. But they kind of like dragged out that whole sadness of Alucard for way too long. And same thing with Hector. It's just like you just see him locked in a cage the whole time. And I was like, yeah, that sucks for him, but like I already know he's in this situation. Plus, I mean, he's kind of just dumb because he just gets more and more worse into the situation with Hector. It's like, oh man, this guy's an idiot, But yeah,
I can say though, if they have like a redemption arc for him, it's going to be a big payoff because of how much he's like, just
yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? How much he's
Endured.
not endured, but that'll work. How much he's endured in season 3?
Yeah.
Well, I think
But yeah.
part of the thing is you're expecting that redemption to take place within the season.
Yeah, that too. And I think it just kind of ended without resolving that, or at least they didn't even have a good hint of like maybe he'll get a way out of this. It's like, nah, dude, he just dug himself deeper,
Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
But to be fair, Curse of Darkness, I think it's 3 years after Dracula's curse and his defeat by, Alucard and Trevor and stuff like that. So, I mean, if they don't do a 5th season, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of, redemption in some way, shape, or form for the character in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So some other media I want to share, since we, here in North America, we haven't gotten a lot of media in our country for Castlevania. But I thought what was interesting, aside from the Captain N with that goofy ass Belmont and the Netflix series in Japan. Well, actually, before I even talk about Japan, in America, back in the early 90s, there's these series of, I guess, young adult adventure books called Worlds of Power. And one of the books was actually based on Simon's Quest. And they were geared towards kids, who were playing video games between the ages of 9 and 13. And it was about their favorite games. But what was interesting is it included games, the book series included games like Mega Man 2 and Ninja Gaiden and Metal Gear. There are 10 books total in the series. And I don't know why they stopped at the 10 books, but they were published by Scholastic. So, either they didn't sell well, or maybe they just thought it was, kids weren't interested in it. But whatever the case may be, I thought that was interesting because I remember seeing those books, but I never read them. Are any of you guys familiar with those?
I had the Mega Man one, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I never got to get them, but those were in Scholastic in elementary. We could buy Super Mario. I bought the Super Mario one. There was more of a kid's one where you eat the mushroom and grow and break everybody out of the castle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know Nintendo had a deal with some other company, because this isn't the same company. They didn't do any Nintendo ones. They dealt with the other companies, but I do remember that Mario Brothers one, because like you said, you get the Scholastic brochure and you could pick your books out and turn in the form to your teacher. Yeah. So that way you could get those books ordered.
Thanks. That's pretty cool.
Some other stuff that I came across. There was a comic book series that came out in 2005. It was done by IDW, but it was a 5-issue series called the Belmont Legacy. And they did release a graphic novel version of it, so it combines all 4 of those books. Have you guys come across those at all?
I've never heard of it.
Not really, to be honest.
So that's something we might want to look at and checking out. Now, the one that probably caught my attention the most, and this is a Japanese-only release, is there's a manga called Dracula X Nocturne in the Moonlight, and it's a prequel to the Symphony of the Night. So it tells you the storyline that leads up to what's going on in Symphony of the Night. So I don't know if it's basically Rondo of Blood or if it's in between Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, but are you familiar with it, guys? No. Okay. Apparently it was released. Maybe it was sold separately, but it sounds like it was released as part of a collector's edition of Symphony of the Night. If you had pre-ordered it back in, we're talking about back in '97, and it was a Japan-only release. And I tried looking online to see if I could find any copies of it, like on eBay, to see maybe we could order one and take a look at it, but I couldn't find anything. but maybe I need to look under the Japanese name. And then the last one, which was interesting, is in Japan, there were 2 radio dramas done for Castlevania. Yeah. There were internet radio dramas, and one of them was based on Symphony of the Night, and the other one was based on other games in the series. It's like the Symphony of the Night was released over like a 4-month period, and you can buy those on CD. They actually have them on on CD, so we could probably order one and have it shipped or something. But I thought that was interesting that they did radio dramas of Castlevania, and those were released actually in 2000. Where is it? I thought I had it down as maybe 2008. Maybe I didn't write down the dates, but it was in the mid 2000s for sure. Not too long. Actually, you know what? Those radio dramas I think ended 2008. Yeah, so it was a couple years before they rebooted the whole Castlevania series with Lord of Shadow.
Speaking of which, just side note, I think the name is terrible. Lords of Shadow. It's just awkward to say, like, because you want to say Lord of Shadows or even Lords of Shadows, like Lords of Shadow, just the one. And
There's only one shadow. Everyone has the same shadow.
Lords of one shadow. That's funny.
All right, so I think we're ready to close this out. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I'm totally down.
I think the last one's you.
Oh, I just did this one question. Are you sure you don't want to do the last one?
I think I'm good. I got to close it anyway.
Okay, because I asked it earlier by mistake anyway. So
we're going to edit that part out.
I think I might leave it in.
All right.
What is your favorite Castlevania game? And we'll start off with Frank.
So it's going to be Rondo of Blood, which I didn't even play until the PSP had the Dracula X Chronicles remake. So that was, trying to think when I played it. It was sometime between 2008 and 2010. I don't remember exactly when, but that's when I had gotten my PSP. And I had always seen gameplay of it. And of course I had played Dracula X by that point, which I didn't really care for. But the soundtrack, Richter being awesome, the branching paths, the graphics, the animations, everything about that game I love. I mean, prior to playing that, I'd say my favorite was probably Symphony, and they are part of the same story, so that that kind of fits. But in all honesty, I think I've played Symphony enough to where Rondo takes its place, because I burned myself out on Symphony. And that was the first Castlevania that I would say I mastered. Well, not necessarily mastered, but I can go through and I can play it and beat it pretty easily. Rondo is still challenging enough to make, I can't just walk through it, but I don't get frustrated playing it. And it has that really good balance. And I really love Richter and the really cheesy cutscenes. When I first played it, they had the newly translated English ones on the PSP, because you could unlock the original Rondo of Blood, and it was either on the PC Engine, it was the Japanese voices or the German voices, and so I never knew what the hell they were saying, of course. But getting that full experience, I just fell in love with it. It's such a great game to go back and play. And actually, the first time I beat it was at our friend Val's house, because I was playing his Pi, and everybody was kind of doing something, and I was just like, well, I want to play Castlevania. So he and I ended up just sitting there and just playing through the game, and we beat it that night. And yeah, great game.
I got a question on the Rondo of Blood. Was that the PC Engine CD one?
Yes.
Or
Yes, it was.
CD version? CD based? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They did do a fan special edition. I forgot what it was called, but it came in this really beautiful box. And I mean, it was all repro stuff, but it had like a stake and a cross and all these cool things that would, that were fan made. If I can find a picture of it, Mike, I'll send it to you.
Cool.
No, I did look it up. The Dracula X Chronicles did release in 2007 on the PSP. The original Rondo of Blood was in '93. So you beat the Dracula X version. Did you also go back and play through the original
Yes,
and beat
yes,
it?
I did. I played through the original on the Castlevania Requiem collection on PS4, and because actually I didn't beat it on PSP. I had unlocked it, but I was still playing the remake version, Dracula X. So I didn't beat it until I played it on PS4.
And it's interesting how it got released the next year on the WiiWare store, or the Wii, whatever they called the store, and it was the original Rondo of Blood with the Japanese and German, so you couldn't play it in English. So it wasn't even the remake; it was the original version. So that was fun. It was part of that Turbo Graphics release, which is the name of the North American name for the PC engine in Japan. And but cool. What about you, Carlos?
So I would still say my first two would be Simon's Quest, of course, when it started me off. Good storyline, I enjoyed it. It was a great adventure. There was a lot of little things going on with that game. Not everyone's beating it, so I won't go too far into it, but it was pretty cool. And of course, Symphony, for me, that was the first time I ever had the voices introduced. I'm pretty sure 64 might have had voices. I could be wrong.
No, it did.
But Symphony for me was the first game that I played that had a lot of voice acting. And it was trippy because when I beat that game, I didn't expect Dracula to be sarcastic and quote the Bible, which was Matthew 15. I didn't expect that, But it was all good, man. I enjoyed it for what it was, and the game was great. Those were my two favorite games overall.
Very cool. Gino, are you there? Gino. Oh, there he is.
One question we should add?
I'm listening.
What's your favorite soundtrack?
Yeah, I had thought about a music question earlier, then I got distracted and forgot to add it in there.
Gino?
You keep muting and unmuting yourself. I'll let you know when you're not muted. Okay, you're not muted. You can talk now.
Can I talk?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, good. Yeah. I don't really know. I think Simon's Quest, man. Like, above and beyond all the rest of them. Much as I love Symphony of the Night and Rondo, like, those are great games, but I don't know. I'd like to go back to any time that's not now. So yeah, I'll definitely go with 2 for that.
So old school then.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good. So then let's talk about Frank's question. I mean, I know Gino in particular has a great affinity for game soundtrack music, but I know particular Castlevania. There's a lot of great themes in Castlevania, especially those early games. So how about, do you mind leading us off on this one, Gino? You have a favorite soundtrack or maybe a favorite song you want to share with us?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely, again, I think Simon's Quest does it best, because you have just about everything in that game has been reanimated for everything else that came after it. So, like Bloody Tears and specifically Bloody Tears. But I would definitely say that's the best, though. I mean, it's tough because, I mean, that's a really rudimentary score as compared to something like Symphony of the Night or Lords of Shadow. So I don't know that you can even put them in the same category. But when I turn on my iPod, the first thing I go to is Simon's Quest. So that's what I'm gonna stick with.
How about you, Carlos?
I would agree with you. It's Simon's Quest and Curse of Dracula. But one of my favorites was a song called Vampire Killer. That was one of my favorite songs. But the overall composition of those first 2 games were great. It had good music, kept you in flow with the game. You had a lot of fun. There's not one moment where you would stray off and get lost. It just kind of keeps you in sync while playing. That's how I enjoyed the game.
Frank?
So I'm gonna say that Super Castlevania 4, it probably has my favorite soundtrack just because it's really ingrained in my mind. My favorite track out of all of the tracks is Bloody Tears, just because of how iconic it really is. And I didn't realize how early in the series it was introduced. It was introduced in Simon's Quest. I don't think they used it well because it's just a regular stage track, and considering how much that song ascended in later games to where they use it, I think a little more appropriately for like bosses or at least more story heavy important parts. I think Bloody Tears really stands out. Vampire Killer is a great track. I think Koji Igaroshi's favorite track is Dracula's Castle, which is the first hallway theme in Symphony of the Night, and I think that's a really great track too. I think an underrated soundtrack is actually Castlevania Judgment because it has rearranged versions of a lot of those classic tracks, but they're done with, full strings, orchestra, electric guitars, proper instruments, and the 8-bit is still cool, but I think even hearing like 16-bit versions or 32 or proper tracks of them really brings them to life because some of those tracks they just get done so much better, like Heart of Fire. They did a redone one on Harmony of Despair, which was an Xbox Live and PSN online multiplayer one, and hearing the redone version of it because it's also rearranged, that's a really awesome track that's redone, and it doesn't even sound very much like the original. So I don't know, this series it's got two things that always stand out. One is the soundtracks, and two is the subtitle for every game. For like every single Castlevania that has a subtitle, they're cool, as opposed to a lot of series, where it's like Vengeance or, Return. It's just lazy. It's lazy. Like, there are more words in the English language. Like, play with them. You've got Portrait of Ruin. You've got Harmony of Dissonance. You've got Curse of Darkness. Like, there's more to the English language. Like, play with it.
Lords of Shadow.
Well, seeing that's where it turns into garbage. I didn't want to bring this. This is the 18-disc soundtrack collection. I bought this a couple years ago, and this has got every single soundtrack, I think, up to minus Lords of Shadow. I think it has, but that original timeline, it's got like even unreleased tracks. If you can find this, I suggest buying it, even if it's expensive, because this music is just that damn beautiful.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Frank that probably my favorite soundtrack does come from Super Castlevania 4. That's probably the one that sticks with me the most. And then a lot of those songs are the ones that get rearranged. He brought up Castlevania Judgment, which is a non-canon 3D fighting game based on Castlevania characters. And then we had played a tournament at your house, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was a fun night.
Actually, that's the tournament. That was a tournament I won. That was one of the few I won. I don't remember who I was playing as though.
I mean, there was people who were just falling off the edge because it was weird to control.
Yeah,
that was true. George.
Yeah, it was George.
Actually, as a matter of fact, one of the things I won was a Simon Belmont 8-bit action figure, and I have it over there on my display stuff. So
it was just funny because George was learning all the moves. He's like, "Oh, I'm doing this cool flip," and then he just like flipped to a ring out. It was funny.
That was good times.
That was good.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. And then Mike, your opinion on the music?
For music-wise, I really do enjoy that very first one. When I went back and finally started to play that game, I just thought the beats were very catchy. My favorite one, I don't know the title of the song, but it's Stage 2, I think, from the first Castlevania. And I wouldn't know how else to... I think it's called Stalker, maybe? I don't know. I'm not too sure.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but I think it has like that bass beat that's going for it.
Oh yeah. It starts off. It's all. Yeah.
So in that first one, so I like that one.
So
That's one of my favorite ones.
as an editing note, pause the video here and just insert the music so everyone knows.
I'll put Frank on loop for a while.
Don't even put the actual music. Just put gameplay and have Frank do. Oh, it's gonna be perfect.
Yeah, it's just I love that original one because Symphony of Night I can't really tell the difference between certain types of music because it just felt natural playing the whole thing because that's one of my favorite ones. But with the original Castlevania, I if I play it, I'll start like humming the melodies in my head during the day. Like it's very catchy beats for that very original one.
Yeah, I think in general you're right that just most of those soundtracks, especially in the early games, really good. I mean, they've stood the test of time because they get reused. You don't find too many new tracks in the newer games. It's a lot of, like Frank said, remixes or rearrangements of those original tracks, and that's just a testament to how good they were.
I do hate the night transition music though. Like in Simon's Quest, I fucking hate that song. I hate it so much because it's repetitive and it sounds goofy. Like that's it over and over, and it's just so annoying.
I think we found our intro and outro music for the podcast.
I'm hearing the music in my head, and to me, it sounds like there's more to it than what you just said. So.
Well, I don't have. Yeah, I can't do all the tracks.
No, but can you do all of it?
Dude.
Oh, I like the Castlevania acapella guy.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's good.
But you know what? To be fair, the day music is Bloody Tears. So how do you follow that up?
Yeah, that is true. That Bloody Tears is probably the single greatest song out of all of the soundtrack. So touching back on what Frank said about the subtitles. So obviously the original Castlevania had no subtitle. We know Castlevania 2 is Simon's Quest. Castlevania on the Game Boy, the first one was pretty lame. It was just the adventure. So, but a lot of Game Boy games didn't have great subtitles. Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. Then there was the Game Boy version of Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge. So pretty simple there. Super Castlevania 4 had no subtitle. Then you had Castlevania Chronicles. And then Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Actually, I have no idea what that subtitle means, but I like it. Yeah, like, I don't know who's Rondo.
Well, Rondo is a musical term. It has to do with like a piece of like arrangement. I don't remember exactly what, but that's what it is. Yeah, pretty much.
And a lot of the themes they use musical terms in a lot of the themes or a lot of the subtitles. I mean, we have you know what we never talked about? We never talked about Castlevania Bloodlines. Did any of you guys ever play that on the Genesis?
I have it.
I did.
Play a little bit of it.
I've never played it before.
It's cool. I think it's a little rough. I guess it's hard. I think it's a hard game, but
yeah, I never finished it. I've only played a little bit on the Castlevania collection. Honestly, that's a very pretty game too, and because it does have that Genesis soundtrack, like it's using that soundboard. It's got an interesting take on some of the classic tracks in a good way, because you don't hear, you're used to hearing the NES and SNES versions, and then when you hear that, I don't know, there's something about the Genesis sounds that it's like sharper because it's got like that twanginess in it. I don't know. I can't really.
I kind of put it in the way it's kind of like when you put distortion on an electric guitar, sort of in a way. It has that, not too much, but like it has that little change to it where, like a buzz feed, sort of in a way. But not in a bad way though. But
well, I think if there's maybe a little more reverb on it, so like that, not really an echo. I don't know. It's really hard to explain with words as opposed to just hey, listen to this track compared to this one.
Yeah.
But
So
But
after Bloodlines, and then there's Dracula X, and then Symphony of the Night, Castlevania Legends. Well, that was on Game Boy. Okay, then here's where it starts getting good. Then you have Circle of the Moon on Game Boy Advance, Harmony of Dissonance Game Boy Advance, Aria of Sorrow Game Boy Advance, Dawn of Sorrow DS, Portrait of Ruin DS, and then they released a mobile game called Order of Shadows. And then they have a DS game, Order of Ecclesia, which was the last in that trilogy or in that series. Then they redid the adventure on the WiiWare store called the Adventure Rebirth. That's when they also did Contra Rebirth and was it Gradius Rebirth? I think it was Gradius. They also did a Rebirth game. So there are remakes of those games. That Xbox Live multiplayer one, Harmony Despair. And then you have Lords of Shadow, Mirror Fate. Those are all the handheld ones. The 3D versions. So the original Castlevania 64 was actually just called Castlevania on N64. It wasn't called Castlevania 64. And then you have Legacy of Darkness, Lament of Innocence on PS2, Curse of Darkness on PS2, Judgment, the fighter, and that's where we end. So they do have a lot of music-inclined subtitles. And I mean, it kind of makes sense with their... like we don't talk about it a lot, I guess, but magic is actually a really big part of the Castlevania games, especially in the later versions, like on Game Boy Advance, those two trilogies, because you have characters who use primarily magic, like what is it? Is it Order of Ecclesia, where it's the female character who's the lead in that one?
yeah, Shinoa.
Yeah, and so it's I mean, a lot of the magic stuff has a lot of the terminology that relates to music. So obviously a big influence in the development of this Castlevania series, especially during that decade. So it's really interesting. Really good stuff. So I think we're good for tonight. You guys have anything to add before we close out?
No, I mean, I feel a little sad that we didn't have a good representation for those handheld titles because I never played. The only one I have is Order of Ecclesia, but I haven't even played it yet. And I heard that that's one of the best handheld ones, like actually one of the best games in the series. So it would have been nice to have that perspective for people who have played it.
Yeah,
I tried quite a bit of them on emulation, but I've never played enough to like have a strong opinion about them yet.
Yeah.
Well, see, now that I'm more familiar with the fact that they're very much in the vein of Metroidvania style games, I may just go back and play them for that reason.
And I think a lot of the Game Boy Advance ones kept the Symphony of the Night, all the stuff they added for Symphony of the Night, they brought them over to the Game Boy Advance ones, all those gameplay mechanics and certain things like that.
Right. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming tonight. Mike B, thank you for co-hosting with me. Frank, you did an excellent job, sir. Thank you. Well on your way to finally leading your own episode. Trust me. Frank, thank you for bringing your expertise with the games you've had. Carlos, thank you for bringing your especially old school experiences with Castlevania. And Gino, as usual, thank you for bringing your goofiness along with your wealth of knowledge on just the entirety of the Castlevania lore. He's still on mute. I don't know if he's going to pipe in and say something like he often does at the last minute. I'm going to give him a second. Let's see. There he goes. You're unmuted. Nope, now you're muted again. Now you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. Yeah. It was fun.
So enthusiastic. All right. Well, I really think we will have to revisit Castlevania later down the line once we've had time to explore some of those other games. I know Carlos, if you guys will follow him on Twitch as his Tobikun, I'll have that link in the description. And but he plays a lot of old school games. He also has a YouTube channel. Your YouTube channel is Nicodemus, or is it also Tobikun? Okay.
It's Nicodemus. Can I change it?
So I'll have both those links for him because he also plays through some of those games, and I think after this conversation he might want to revisit or go look at some of those games that he hasn't played yet, and maybe play them for you guys to check them out. I know I'm playing. We talked a little bit about Bloodstained. I'm playing what's the subtitle for this Bloodstain? Ritual of the Night, and which is very good. And Mike B, you finished that one, Ritual of the Night, or
Bloodstained, I have not finished it. I got stuck on a boss and the frame rates would drop, so I just got frustrated.
Which boss was it? Do you remember?
That jester with all the poker chips and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Wow, you're having frame rate issues on that one? What are you playing it on?
On the PS4. So I was gonna try to download it for the PC on the Game Pass and try to go through it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing it on, and I didn't have any issues with that boss. So hopefully...
PS4, the frame rate was so bad, I couldn't avoid things, and I was like, this is BS. Like, you know. And I struggled it for a whole week, so then I finally just gave up, and I was like, I'm not gonna play on there.
Well, Mike...
I just want to do a shameless plug for the NES soundtrack thing that I've got on the website. If you've got a minute and 30 seconds, you can read through each one. Through the whole thing. They're really short.
It's not a shameless plug. It's our channel. It's our website.
It's pretty shameless.
Gino is posting a weekly article on his top 25 NES games, and there hasn't been a Castlevania one on there yet, but I'm sure one's coming. But we're at number 17, I think. So we still got a ways to go, but yeah, check them out. They're good. I'll also have the link to that in the description. Mike B streams on YouTube, and recently he's been playing. Was it Halo? You've been streaming?
Yeah, Halo, good. Because the Master Chief Collection on the PC, so
that's right.
Checking them out. Yeah.
And then Frank and I have started working on unboxing videos. The plan is to have one up here in the next week or two, based on what we did. It depends on the time frame we have, but we got some good stuff coming, including Bloodstained and some other stuff down the line. So look forward to that. Other than that, I
definitely want to check out that Blasphemous you guys been playing. I saw you playing that when we were on Discord together,
Blasphemous,
and I was like blown away by the visuals, by watching you play, and I was like, that looks really cool.
There are 3 Metroidvania style games I tell you guys that you have to play, and not just you guys, but the audience as well. If you like Metroidvania games, Hollow Knight, Guacamelee, particularly number 1. Number 2 is really good, but number 1 I think is still better. And then Blasphemous. Those are incredible games. Guacamelee is probably the easiest one to go into. Hollow Knight and Blasphemous are much more demanding. They're much more challenging, but they are still excellent games. But with that being said, thank you guys for coming out tonight. Thank you, viewers, for watching. We love doing this. We're having a blast doing this, and I'm glad we can do it despite everything that's going on with the pandemic. I have nothing more to add. I think that's it for tonight. So thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
See you guys.
Frank, play us out with some Castlevania beats.
What was that bass?
Give us that bass. Slapping the bass.
I have no regrets in life.
Break it down, Frank, one more time.
Oh my god.
And we're out.
Oh, that was funny.
Gino, get some fucking headphones.
Hey everyone, Mike B from OCP Gamers Podcast here. Today's episode is dedicated to our friend Carlos, who was featured in the episode. Sadly enough, as a group, we lost one of our greatest friends this past weekend as he passed away. Carlos was one of the most amazing dudes, nice and caring people that I ever met. He was always there for me anytime I needed him. At my lowest times, dude, he loved old school video games. He loved wrestling, obscure Japanese movies that he loved to share with us, and we enjoyed. This episode is dedicated to him as he's featured in it. None of this is coming out how I really want because there's so much I want to say, and it's just really hard to. I highly suggest everyone checks out his YouTube channel and his videos because he's very entertaining, very fun to watch as he enjoys playing old school retro games. This episode was very difficult to edit because I'm gonna miss you, Carlos, and I love you, buddy.
Hey guys, what more is there to say about our good friend Carlos that hasn't already been said? I've been trying to think of something beautiful or poetic to say, but just nothing came out right. So I'm just gonna keep it simple. Carlos, we will miss your kindness and your generosity and your awesome Halloween costumes and your unique taste in movies and your desire to make us all feel loved by you. You are dearly missed by us all, and there's always going to be a hole in our hearts without you to fill it. So goodbye, my friend, and we love you.
Hey Toby, it's me, it's Miss Sai. It's not easy for me to say goodbye, but I know that you left us living a very fulfilled life, surrounded by people that love you and care about you. I'm very thankful that you stayed in my stream after a raid one day, and this was before I became affiliate, and you were always there. This was when you were still Nicodemus Lives. You hadn't started streaming yet, but you were there for all my scary streams, and just all around, it's like such a good person. You've always been so supportive. That about you never changed, and not once have I ever felt like you had anything negative to say about anyone. And I think that a lot of people can learn something from how compassionate and caring and kind that you were. It feels like when I want to say something, I just feel like I had all my thoughts gathered, and now I can't even I can't even remember what I want to say, but I'm really going to miss you. I'm going to miss your streams. It was hard to not want to go see your streams after finding out that you had left us, but it's a good reminder of how awesome you were. All the retro videos you made. Just the knowledge you had when it came to video games. And so I hope one of these days, one of your suggestions to my tweet about scary games was Siren. And I did watch you play that before, and I actually did buy it when it went on sale months ago. So I hope one day to play that for you, and hope that you'll be able to watch me play. Toby, we're gonna miss you. Don and I are gonna miss you. We're never gonna forget all the good times that we've had, how you have been so inviting for me to play with you and your friends. So I hope that you continue to do as much entertaining up there in heaven for all the other folks. Take care. I'm never going to forget you. You impacted my life in more ways than you can imagine. I know that we never got a chance to meet in person, but I hope you do know that you changed my life for the better, and I'm never going to forget the kind of person that you are. Bye, Toby.
Dale, güey, dale.
¡Con huevos, cabrón!
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah. 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carlos. Happy birthday to you. Ouch. Mira nomás. Yeah.
person. He was always showing us how to love unconditionally. Never looked at anything in a negative way and always looked at the positive things. And I'm grateful that I had the time that I had with him. And I'm grateful for all the movie nights he gave us, all the times we watched wrestling, all his streams, and all the times he stayed up with me and just talked about everything and anything. He was always a good friend, and he will be missed by everyone, and there's nobody in the world that can replace such a wonderful soul like Carlos. I just want to say we miss you, we love you, and I'll treasure every memory with you. I love you, Carlos.
Hey Carlos, it's Bobby. So last thing we talked about, you were asking about whether I thought you would make a good father. I don't think I gave you quite the answer I had intended. The obvious answer is yes. You, my friend, would have made a terrific father. And you would have had some great kids, man. And it makes me sad that I'm living in a world where there's not going to be any children that were raised by you. But I'm going to make sure that at least I will treat my children with the same kind of kindness and love that I know that you would have. That is the best that I can do, and I know it's exactly what you would expect from me. So, I love you, man, and I miss you, and I know someday, on the flip side, man, I'm gonna catch you again. You ain't gone forever, and we're gonna make sure that you're never forgotten. And I know that's all you really want. I know you don't want us hanging on to any hurtful pain or anything here. That's why I'm still gonna be streaming, because it's something we did together, and it's something I'm gonna keep doing. We're gonna keep growing this community. We're gonna welcome in new people, and we're gonna keep being good to each other, because that, more than anything, is what the world needs. And I know some people say the world is a sadder place without you. That's why we got to work harder to make sure we make it better. So again, man, I love you. I miss you. And damn, would have been a damn fine father, Carlos. Love you, man.
に国境も男も女も関係ねえやっちまえ